Alfie. Representative Chisholm. Chairman Crawford. Leader Gant. Chairman Helton. Representative Miller. Vice Chairman Wright. Chairman Moon.
Present.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Clerk. Is there any personal orders? Seeing none, we'll take one bill out of order this morning. That is House Bill 616 by Vice Chairman Rutter. Is there a motion? There's a motion and a second. Chairman Rutter, you're recognized on House Bill 616.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee, and thank you for taking me out of order. This is a bill that I brought last year, and since that time, I've worked closely with the Comptroller's Office to get it in a better, I think it's a stronger bill, although I loved it last year. And you must have too, because it passed out, and I got it all the way to calendar and rules, and then, of course, COVID happened. So I'm back this year, and I hope you will agree again. This bill revises the conflict of interest provision of the County Financial Management System Act of 81. The conflict of interest language of the Act of 81 is broader than similar conflict of interest laws, as it applies to all county employees. Now, even though they have no decision-making authority as to purchasing, this bill would amend the conflict of interest provision so that it would only apply to county employees who are actually involved in the purchasing process. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Mr. Chairman, this bill is forward discussion before I call for discussion.
Is there objection to the question? Hearing no objection, we're voting on House Bill 616. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Ayes prevail. It moves on to the next spot on local government. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee.
Next bill is House Bill 772 by Leader Lambeth, presented by Representative Russell. Is there a motion on the bill?
Motion.
Second on the bill? Motion and a second. Representative Russell, you are recognized on House Bill 772.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I do have an amendment 4347.
Is there a motion on Amendment 4347? Is there a second? There's a motion and a second on Amendment 4347. Representative Russell, you are recognized on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The amendment does three things. It cleans up the definition of a volunteer firefighter. Section 2, it clarifies the yearly training hours as 30 hours per year for a volunteer firefighter. And then Section 3, it just amends the effective date.
Okay, any questions on the amendment? Okay, there's objection to the question. Hearing no objection, we're voting on Amendment 4347. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. The ayes prevail. We're back on the bill. Mr. Sponsor, any other explanation on the bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. This bill would make volunteer firefighters who successfully complete an annual in-service training course eligible for a $600 payment. Currently, these men and women who give their time don't get anything for their yearly in-service, and this will just allow them to have a little extra incentive to complete that training.
Any questions? Representative Miller, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one question. It seems as if there's a recurring increase in state expenditures, 4.9 million. How many volunteer firefighters would that impact statewide? Do you have a
Representative Russell.
I don't have that, but we have somebody from Department of Commerce and Insurance if you'd like to go out of session to get those numbers. Or might be able to-
Representative Miller.
I was just curious, but if you have that number, I was just wanted to know that.
Okay, we'll go out of session. If you'll please identify yourself and who you're with.
Thank you. Mary Beth Gribble. I serve as the Programs and Policy Director for the Tennessee State Fire Marshal's Office. Thank you, Representative Miller, for that question. We have estimated approximate 12,000 volunteer firefighters across the state of Tennessee. We have estimated that approximately half of them will probably become eligible during this first year of the program.
Representative Miller.
Which leads to this question. Half of the 12,000 would become eligible this year. What happens next year and the year after that if more become eligible?
Yes, sir. I can say from the perspective of the State Fire Marshal's Office, we know that better trained firefighters are safer firefighters. So we always support the training and, of course, the incentive to ensure that firefighters are certified to a higher level of standardization across the state. We do have approximately 600 fire departments that will be impacted by this. Out of the 700 across the state, 506 of those are entirely volunteer. A little bit over 100 are combination, where approximately 5 or less members are either part-time or partially paid, the remainder of those volunteers. So when we look at that, 600 entities of anything typically do a lot of different things. So we have some fire departments that are exempt from the minimum training requirements, and we have some fire departments that do a fantastic job with their training and training that are sometimes above some of our career firefighters.
Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Great bill. Thank
Any
you.
other questions? Thank you. We're back in session. Representative Russell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I renew my motion.
Okay, is there objection to the question? Hearing no objection, we're voting on House Bill 772. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Ayes prevail. Goes to the next available calendar of local government.
Thank you.
The next bill is House Bill 1529 by Chairman Powers. Is there a motion on House Bill 1529? We have a motion and a second. Chairman Powers, you're recognized on House Bill 1529.
No. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. I appreciate it. House Bill 1529 is a local bill that allows the city of Jellicoe to impose a 2% tax subject to local approval on restaurants in their city that that have over $200,000 in sales every year.
Chairman Powers,
Yes.
do you have an amendment on the bill, sir?
Not that I know of. Let me check. No, I do not.
Okay, sorry.
I'm
Pardon for
sorry.
the
Okay.
interruption. I had to add an amendment on there, but
Okay.
you're still recognized on 1529.
Okay. So it will not affect any small eateries or any kind of small mom and pop type establishment. All proceeds will be used to retire a debt that was incurred years ago under a prior administration. At that time, the comptroller had to come in and take over the finances of the city and restructure their debt. So this tax has a sunset provision and when the debt is retired. And with that, I renew my motion.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment here on your bill, 5192.
Okay.
Deletes the language in subsection 2, section 1, located 3 miles off highway vehicle trail area authorized by Tennessee TWRA. That's the language.
Okay.
I'll give you a moment.
Is that for 1528 or 1529?
1520, House Bill 1529. It's
Okay.
at the top of the barcode.
Okay. I'm sorry. I did not have that. That was just the one trying to describe the area that this was located in, you know, how they use that.
The chair will
description
entertain a motion on
rather than-
amendment 5192. There's a motion. Is there a second? We have a motion and a second on the amendment, sir.
Okay.
And go ahead. You were
Okay,
describing the amendment.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yes. The amendment actually will locates exactly where the area is located. I said the city of Jellicoe, so it just really describes that particular area by the dimensions and the location geographically.
Okay, are there questions? Any questions on the amendment? Representative Calfee? On the bill. Okay. Is there objection to the question on the amendment? Hearing no objection, we're voting on amendment 5192. All in favor say aye. Opposed say no. Ayes prevail. Now we're back on the bill. Chairman Powers, you're recognized on House Bill 1529.
Okay, just wanted to reinstate what the bill does. So it will retire a debt, and it does have a sunset provision. And when that debt is retired, that provision will retire also. And with that, I'll take any other questions.
Members have questions. Representative Calfee, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Sponsor, I served a long time in local government. Is there any safeguards in this that would keep the town from borrowing more money and tacking on to this and just keep this going forever?
Chairman Powers.
Yes. Yes, there is, and that is the sunset provision, that all that money has to be applied toward that debt to reduce that prior debt that was incurred up there when the comptroller come in and restructured everything. So when that debt is retired, then that tax provision will also be retired.
Representative Calfee.
So there's no piling on going to come of this?
No.
Chairman Powers.
Thank
No,
you.
we're good. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you,
Bye.
Mr. Sponsor.
Vice Chairman Wright, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As we had the discussion of the amendment, which the sponsor, I believe, obviously thought the amended words were in the original bill, and when I look at the marked calendar, those three things are what is stated in the rest of the body of the original outside the amendment box. So am I confused by what we have, I thought it was straightforward. Do I need to be corrected?
Let's go out of session and refer to legal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms.
Doug-
Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Doug Garrett with the Office of Legal Services. Representative Wright, I believe your question pertains to why we have the amendment. And that would be because, one, the amendment applies to the city of Jellicoe, and that was a clarification issue. So the language that was added was included in the descriptive to include 6 miles of an off-highway vehicle trail rather than 3 miles, which was contained in the bill. Because what you did was you captured, I think, Jacksboro rather than Jellicoe.
That's right. Yes.
And then to further specify that this applies to Jellicoe, which lies on the state border.
Right.
Then you had, and has a welcome center, then you have also subdivision C that was added to the language. So the amendment, as it pertains to the descriptive, is for clarification purposes.
Vice Chairman Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So my acting, I do not want to do anything that would cause the committee harm. If we need further time for committee members to consider what's being offered today, should we take that in consideration?
I would caution that this would be the third calendar. And this is very important. I think there's a workout restructuring that took place with the comptroller's office for this area. And I think
Okay.
this bill is a local bill, but it's also trying to comply with the action of the comptroller. Mr. Sponsor, is that correct? And we're out of session.
Okay. Then, do we need to go back in?
We
or
need
do-
to go back into
Okay.
session. So
Okay.
now,
Yeah.
Chairman Powers, can you shed a
Yeah.
little light on why this bill is before us?
Yes. Matter of fact, I just passed on the House floor last night. There were actually 2 parts of this bill. And we have to get 2/3 vote of the city council, and then they have to have a referendum too. So that was the part I passed last night. This is the other part of it. And what had happened, and I understand what you're saying, because we had in here, I think when they wrote it up originally, they put like 3 miles in here, and they had a description in here, but the description is a little bit different than what they had in here. So that's where the amendment came from, just to make sure that it only applied to the city of Jellicoe.
Vice Chairman Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not going to stand between the people and the ballot box, so I'll have to support this bill.
Leader Gant, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Powers, can you define what's the sunset provision date on this?
Chairman
You know the-
Powers.
It didn't have a date specific. It didn't have a date specific. It was a date whenever they get the amount paid off, is a $700,000 debt, is what had been incurred by some previous administrations before the comptroller come in and restructured it and got the city back in the black, but that debt is still there. So all they're trying to do is retire that debt. So that exact date that debt will be retired, I don't know that.
Leader Gant.
So once that debt is met and it's paid off, that's the sunset provision trigger mechanism.
Exactly.
Chairman
So it
Powers.
stops at that point.
Right.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Representative Calfee, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What's the projection of revenue that this increase will bring in on an annual basis?
Chairman Powers.
Based on it only pertains to restaurants that have over $200,000 a year in sales. Right now, there's only about 2 that meet that requirements, and it'd be roughly about $40,000 to $50,000 a year. So it's going to take about 10, 12, 13 years to probably pay off this debt in entirety.
Representative Calfee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Other questions from the committee? Is there objection to the question? Hearing no objection, we're voting on House Bill 1529. All in favor say aye. Opposed say no. Ayes prevail. House Bill 1529 moves to the next available calendar of local government.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee.
Next bill is House Bill 35 by Representative Ogles. Is there a motion on the bill? Representative Ogles asked that this not be heard this morning. And pursuant to our rule, it appeared on calendars of the 3rd, the 10th, and the 17th for the meetings on March 9, 16, and 23. Without objection, House Bill 35 will go to the special calendar to be published with the final calendar. Hearing no objection, House Bill 35 goes to special calendar. The next bill is House Bill 155 by Chairman Haston. There's been a request to roll for 1 week. Without objection, hearing no objection, House Bill 155 is rolled 1 week. Next bill is House Bill 1222 by Representative Hakeem. Without objection, House Bill 1222 is off notice. Hearing no objection, it's off notice. Next bill is House Bill 549 by Representative Gillespie. If you'll come forward, is there a motion on House Bill 549? So moved. Is there a second? Second. Motion is second on House Bill 549. Representative Gillespie, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I do have an amendment for this bill.
Amendment number?
5238.
Is there a motion on amendment number 5238? The motion is second. Representative Gillespie, you are recognized on amendment 5238.
So what this amendment does is it sets the date of when it becomes effective back to March 1st, 2020.
Okay, anything else? Okay, is there questions or discussion on the amendment? Representative Miller, you're recognized on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The question, does this cover one individual or?
Does that have to do with the date, sir?
Okay.
The only thing on the date is on the amendment is the effective date.
So it goes back, it's retro.
Yes, this sets it back from to March 1st, 2020, when it becomes effective.
Okay. Any other question on the amendment?
Okay, got that date. Well, I'll ask a question on the bill. Thank you.
Okay. Is there objection to the question? We're voting. Hearing none, we're voting on amendment 5238. All in favor say aye. Opposed say no. The ayes prevail. We're back on the bill. House Bill 549. Representative Miller, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since this retro, based on the amendment, does that cover one individual or?
There was an instant that this would cover, yes, sir.
Representative Miller.
I didn't understand what you said.
Representative Gillespie, you're recognized.
There was an instant over the summer that this would cover, yes, sir.
Any other questions? Vice Chairman Wright, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I noticed that there is not a fiscal note. Then the question is, where's the money coming from?
Representative Gillespie?
So I can certainly get you more information about that. It's my understanding that the way that this is paid out is through a annuity type contract. An annuity might not be the right word, but I can certainly get you more information on that.
Representative Wright?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's not that really I need to know. My only question with it, I guess, is is it that we're passing an unfunded mandate?
Representative Gillespie?
That is not my understanding, no. It's
Vice Chairman Wright, maybe I can shed light.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Pursuant to the code 751-210, the state of law enforcement officer is killed in the line of duty is entitled to receive a $250,000 annuity paid by the states in installments of $50,000 each year for 5 years. This is the start. Let me go out of session and refer to legal and let legal do a proper explanation. Is there objection? We're out of session and recognize Legal Services, Doug Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Doug Garrett with Legal Services. Do you have a revised fiscal note from Fiscal Review that would reflect the language contained in the amendment? Because the bill is what Chairman Moon spoke to regarding the $250,000 annuity to be paid by the state in installments of $50,000 each year for 5 years. So that's all, Mr. Chairman, that we have, save for an amended fiscal note to address the retroactive provision. Right now, I think that's all we have to go on. That's the start.
And it states it's not significant. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions for legal before we go back into session? Seeing none, we'll go. Chairman Crawford, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's my understanding that we already have this in place for our full-time officers, and I think there's even a program set for firefighters, full-time firefighters. And I think it's a federal fund that actually has been put together that they send monies down to pay these out from the state if that happens, and they're just wanting to include this group of deputy jailers. But due to those questions that we don't have the answer to, sponsor, would you be willing to roll this a week till you can get us that information?
Chairman Crawford, let's go back into session.
Okay.
We'll go back into session. Chairman Crawford, you're recognized on the bill.
I'm just asking the sponsor, and he may not be willing to, but, would you be willing to get those answers for us?
Representative Gillespie.
Chairman, are you referring to the updated fiscal note, or?
Yes.
Okay. We have reached out. I don't know. I can certainly reach out again and hold this a week if that is what the committee would like.
Chair feels like that may be
It's-
very helpful.
Yeah,
So will you entertain a roll?
sure.
Without objection, House Bill 549 be rolled 1 week. Hearing no objection. Thank you very much, Representative Gillespie. Next bill is House Bill 952 by Chair Lady Littleton. There's a motion. Is there a second? Chair Lady Littleton, you're recognized on House Bill 952.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And it does have an amendment that makes the bill 5309.
Is there a motion on Amendment 53? There's a motion on, and a second on House Bill, on Amendment 5309. You're recognized on the amendment.
Thank you, Chairman. This says a county that provides a retirement and pension plan to its employees through the state consolidated retirement system with the approval of an establishment program by the county legislative body may provide for the establishment of the retirement credit for employees who are activated into active duty service in the armed forces of the United States and regain employment with the county after such military service.
Questions? Is there objection to the question on the amendment? Hearing none, we're voting on amendment 5309. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. The ayes prevail and the amendment goes forward. We're back on the bill, 952. Is there objection to the question? Hearing no objection, we're voting on House Bill 952. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Ayes prevail. It moves on to the next available calendar, local government. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman and Committee.
The next bill is House Bill 1462 by Representative Cochran. Is there a motion? We have a motion and a second on the bill. Representative Cochran, you are recognized on House Bill 1462. We have a motion and a second. It's properly before the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill came to us from the Comptroller's office, and essentially it's addressing leases that are over $100,000 for local governments. So GASB, G-A-S-B is the acronym there, Government Accounting Standards Board. That's kind of the standard bearer for government accounting. They've started considering leases that are over $100,000 debt. And so what the Comptroller's office is requesting is that these leases come to their office for approval, basically just to ensure that local governments are getting the best deal. There have been situations where local governments have entered into these leases, and they're actually the very high interest rates, and where a traditional note would have been a very low interest rate. So they're just asking, hey, let's take a look at these. There might be a better debt option than this large lease. But with that, I will yield to any questions.
Is there objection to the question? Hearing no objection, we're voting on House Bill 1462. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Ayes prevail. House Bill 1462 moves to the next available calendar, local government. Representative Cochran, the next bill is House Bill 1558. Is there a motion on the bill? There's a motion and a second on the bill. Representative Cochran, you are recognized on House Bill 1558.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And what this bill does is it gives counties the powers under the Junkyard Control Act of 1967. The state of Tennessee already has this ability, so on state highways, if there's a junkyard or a scrapyard that moves in there, the state can say, hey, you've got to screen it, you've got to gravel your driveway to make sure you don't muddy up the road. Cities have this ability as well. This kind of gives counties that same type of, it's a little bit more of a surgical option rather than a county-wide zoning ordinance. This gives them the ability to work with this issue.
Chairman Crawford, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One question, Representative Cochran. What about the junkyards that are already established and those type things? Will they be grandfathered in, or will this retro back to them?
Representative Cochran.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's my understanding that, and again, I can confirm this and get back with you. I think that you know, there would have to, I think that they would, at least screening requirements and things like that, I think that they would have to meet those, but I can confirm that and get back with you. Again, I don't have a 100% answer on that, but I can get back.
Chairman Crawford.
That would definitely affect my decision, so
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Any other questions for the sponsor?
And again, I can get you an answer, and we
The
can.
bill is I've read the bill text, it's silent.
Right. And legal may have a decision on that as well.
Go out of session and refer to legal.
Sure.
Mr. Garrett, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, Doug Garrett with legal. The language, as stated in the bill, is permissive in that the counties may regulate junkyards located within the county's boundaries by rule, regulation, ordinance, zoning, or private act, as long as the rules of regulation are at least as stringent as you stated. The language, of course, is permissive with the use of the word may. It doesn't address the issue of grandfathering of any existing junkyards. So absent that language, at least on its face, the bill does not address that issue.
And
Any questions for legal while we're out of session? Okay, hearing none, we'll go back into session. Representative Cochran, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. And if I may, just regarding that, as far as grandfathering in, I think it actually it makes sense allowing counties to address this, even on those existing ones, because if they're already having an issue with a site, if there's already a junkyard that, is causing mud or on a county road or is resulting in, kind of piling up junk on the road, that's a problem that needs to be addressed. And so personally, I think it makes sense to allow this to apply to existing junkyards.
Any other questions? Chairman Crawford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, that brings up another issue. Do we not have ordinances in place to keep them from having runoff on the roads and to parking stuff on the roads?
Representative Cochran.
Counties do not. Most counties do not. Cities have ordinance power. Counties do not have citing abilities. Counties act under the general provisions of state law. Currently, there is, again, most counties do not have ordinance passing abilities. They pass resolutions. Cities pass ordinances, and they have that specific power. The state has that. Counties, again, have to receive that authority from general provisions of state law, and that's what this would do. That's what this would give them.
Chairman Crawford.
And I understand that, but I would think federal regulations would protect whether it's county, city, or what, if they're having runoff. But I'm not against your bill. I've just had
Sure.
some things hit my mind here. So
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Cochran. Anyone else have questions? Is there objection to the question? Hearing no objection, we're voting on House Bill 1558. All in favor say aye. Opposed say no. Ayes prevail. It moves to the next available calendar of local government. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman and Committee.
The next bill is House Bill 1386, and Chairman Todd has been presenting this morning, so we'll roll, without objection, we'll roll House Bill 1386 to the heel. Hearing no objection, we'll roll to the heel. Next bill is House Bill 1297 by Representative Stewart. It's been a request for a 2-week roll. Without objection, hearing no objection, House Bill 1297 is rolled 2 weeks. The next bill is House Bill 714 by Vice Chairman Hurt. Is there a motion? Do we have a motion? We have a second. Vice Chairman Hurt, you're recognized on House Bill 714.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you would indulge me, in order to be sure the committee understands the entirety of this legislation, and it's very short, I would ask to read through this.
Without objection.
Thank you, sir. If House Bill 714 addresses if a municipality or county has or implements a personnel policy that places an employee on leave for a period of time immediately following an arrest of the employee, the municipality or county shall implement a policy of restoring back pay to the employee if the charges are dropped or the employee is found not guilty of the charges. The requirement does not apply if the employee pleads guilty to the charges or enters into a plea agreement on the charges or separates from employment voluntarily before the charges are dropped or before the employee is found not guilty, or if the employee administratively is terminated for a reason other than the arrest. Public records related to an administrative action against an employee must be maintained for the applicable retention period and are not subject to destruction under 4032-101. Such public records are maintained solely for the purposes of documenting the administrative action and submissions in litigation.
Thank you. Questions for the sponsor? Chair has one question. What during this time, I'm sure there'll be an investigation, if a policy's been violated, the person's found not guilty or not, charges are dropped, but there's HR policies are violated. Is this part of the intent of this piece of legislation?
As far as if
for
they
discharge? in paying of back pay?
I do not know on that one. I would hate to state and be wrong, Mr. Chair. I can look into it for you, absolutely.
No, that's all right. Do you have someone who's here today to testify on the bill? I think David Connors has requested. He doesn't want to. Okay. Other questions from the committee? Chairman Crawford, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you repeat your question that you asked him again? Thank you.
I was just looking at a situation where someone is arrested and then the charges are dropped, but during the investigation, they uncover issues of policies that have been violated, human resource policies of the agency. Whether or not this would speak to that, and it may not be a question for this bill. Chairman Hurt, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The only, in getting that, having that clarified a little more, the only part of this I would see that might refer to it is if the employee is administratively terminated for a reason other than the arrest.
That's
would be in the second part of the requirement does not apply. So I hope that would clarify your question.
It does. Thank you. Chairman Crawford, do you have any other question? Okay, is there objection to the question? Hearing no objection, we're voting on House Bill 714. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. The ayes prevail. Moves on to the next available calendar, local government.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee.
Thank you. Chairman Todd is come into the chamber, and the next bill will be Chairman Todd. Is there a motion on House Bill 1386? There's a motion, a second on House Bill 1386. Chairman Todd, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate y'all accommodating the schedule today. As you know, it's that time of year. It gets kind of hectic. What this bill does, it addresses some problems that our counties have been seeing. I'm sure many of you are familiar with situations where different groups in our counties have the ability to, especially law enforcement, our sheriff's departments, have the ability to sue the county commission and ask for more positions or more money. And the system we have set up to accommodate for that, and there's good reason for it, is an expedited system, quite frankly. And I'll read a couple of points here for you that'll help summarize this. By code, some local level elected officials are able to seek assistance from the circuit court when their county commission fails to grant them adequate relief in their budget requests. Specifically, the number of employees and or their salaries, hence the name salary dispute legislation that we have. The code seems to intend for these suits to be an expedited process. Most lawsuits in general in the public allow 6 months from the date of triggering action for the person to file suit. Personal injury is 1 year. Property damage is 3 years. Breach of contract, 6 years. Salary dispute in this situation is 30 days from the date the budget is passed. So it's already meant to be an expedited process. Normal lawsuits also provide 30 days for a defendant to respond to a suit filed. Salary dispute in this situation is 5 days. The statute also states after an answer is filed, the court shall promptly, in term or at chambers, have such a hearing on the application, the petition, and the answer, and will develop the facts, and the court can hear proof either for or against the petition. So it essentially reads as, quote, complaint, answer, hearing. In normal litigation, there are discoveries, depositions, motions filed, hearings filed, and then a trial date is set. This is a much faster process. There's also no limit or cap on the fees sought by attorneys. That's the crux of this matter. There are a lot of situations in Hardeman County, for example, near me. There was an attorney who fought a salary dispute case, requested almost $1 million in attorney fees. This was eventually reduced to the court down to $366,000. I don't remember exactly on that one how much the actual award was from the standpoint of what the county commission had to cough up, but it's a fraction of this usually. These attorney fees are exorbitant. They intentionally run up the bill because they know the county's got to pay it. Judge is going to award it. So what this bill does, it limits that to $15,000 for these expedited cases unless authorized by the court should good cause be shown. So a judge then would be put in charge of saying, okay, XYZ attorney, we feel like this is a bigger case. This is going to take a lot more time. Therefore, we're going to award you more fees, but here are your limits. So the judge would be in charge instead of, after the fact, getting a bill that the county is supposed to be paying. So our taxpayers are getting hit by these large sums and large bills for very little results. I mean, it doesn't change the county budget that much from the standpoint of what the goal is, to get a raise for a group of deputies or to get more employees hired. You may be looking at a fiscal impact of a lawsuit like this literally being $10,000 or $20,000, and the suit cost $500,000. So it's totally out of whack. And so that's what this bill does. It puts that cap on. It sets a hearing date within 90 days, unless authorized by the court, should good cause be shown. And again, it puts it in the control of the judge at that point to determine what's fair in this case. So I'll be glad to take some more questions if that hasn't answered most of them.
At this time, I'd like to, Sergeant North, please close the door to the hallway, please.
Rowdy bunch out there.
Any questions for the sponsor? Yes, Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Todd, in the example you gave of an attorney charging $1 million to the county, that's quite a bit. But this bill is saying we'll go from an example of $1 million down to a cap of only $15,000.
Chairman Todd.
Yes, sir, that's what this does, and unless there's good cause, if that attorney can show the judge, 15 isn't going to do it. This is a bigger case. This isn't a simple expedited issue like the law provides for. This has some other merits that are going to take a lot more depositions. That's what they're doing. They're saying, okay, this simple thing, we're going to blow it up into a major ordeal. We're going to take depositions. We're going to run up a bunch of hours. An attorney literally brought this to a colleague of mine and said, I have made a killing off of this over the years, but it's not right. The taxpayers are being hammered over this, and we've got to put some kind of reins on this.
Representative Miller.
So this example is that the $15,000, the judge will have the discretion to increase that.
Chairman Todd.
Yes, sir, that is correct. But it would be up to the judge. If the attorney couldn't just on their own start running up a bill, they're going to have to get approval from the judge to be able to do that for good cause. They have to show good cause to do that.
Representative Miller.
So any judge could run it back up to $1 million.
Chairman Todd.
Theoretically, yes.
Okay.
If they see it's a bigger case than what law provides this expedited process for, they absolutely could. And we want to leave that provision because I don't know what might come up in the future, what situation may come up with a county entity like the Sheriff's Department. And so we want to leave that in there for the judge's discretion.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Any other questions? Any other discussion? Leader Gant, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Is this a statewide application?
Chairman Todd.
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Any other questions? Without objection? Hearing no objection, we're voting on House Bill 1386. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. The ayes prevail. House Bill 1386 moves to the next regular calendar
Thank you,
of
committee.
local government. This time we need to go out of session. Move the gavel.
We'll now go back into session. Item number 14 on our list today is House Bill 656. Chairman Moon, do I have a motion and second? Got a proper motion and second. Bill's before us properly. Chairman Moon, you're recognized.
Thank you,
on
Mr.
House Bill 656.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Certified Municipal Finance Officer Program began in 2007. Currently has 650 active participants. And the Certified County Finance Officers Program began 10 years later in 2017. The municipal program requires 24 hours of continuing education and the county program only requires 16 hours annually. The program for counties provides expense reimbursement and stipends for achieving the certification. This bill is brought to us by the comptroller. It revises the continuing education requirements to 16 hours annually for both programs. It removes the penalty hours from the city program for not meeting the training requirement. Additionally, this bill allows for expense reimbursement and stipend for successfully completing the program for cities, subject to available funding. This bill removes outdated compliance dates that were in the original 2007 bill. And lastly, it allows municipalities to contract with CPAs that do not have a CMFO on their staff. For cities, this is required. So there's a provision being made that they can contract with a CPA in lieu of sending a person through the training. Any questions?
You've heard the discussion and explanation from Chairman Moon on 656. Is there any questions? Representative Miller, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see where the comptroller has walked into the room. I was wondering if it's something he wanted to say before we vote on this bill. You're all good with that? Okay.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I don't think we had a email timely to recognize the comptroller.
You put me in place, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we're ready to vote. All those in favor of House Bill 656 moving on to full, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Bill's moving on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee.
We will now be out of session.
We're back into session. That concludes today's calendar. Are there any announcements? Absolutely. Good you're with us. The chair has one announcement. The last calendar for Cities and Counties Subcommittee will be 6 April. 6 April. So any other announcements? Without objection, we'll stand adjourned. Hearing no objection, we are adjourned.